Hello and welcome to another how-to video. My name's Ditech, CTO at DVS, and thank you to our channel sponsor Toshiba, which leads us on what are we going to take a look today. So before we go any further, big thank you to you guys for liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting. Without you guys, this channel would just not be worth any point doing it. You guys drive the enthusiasm, the content, etc. A couple of you in the past weeks or months have asked about RAID. More and more people are looking for a RAID solution. Now RAID in CCTV, you can either love it or you can hate it. Some people absolutely love it, some people absolutely hate it. So today's video is based upon RAID. So what is RAID, I hear you ask? So RAID gives you the ability to have built-in redundancy within the hard drives. RAID stands for a redundant array of independent disks. If you want to use RAID in CCTV, you can follow this simple video and I'll give you an overview for the Hikvision setup of what that is, what it entails and what it offers you. If you do want to use RAID, now RAID is really good if you have a need where you want to make sure your data or data, any data in a CCTV system, but it applies in the data world as well, is or has some built-in redundancy. We can offer that through these Hikvision 96000 recorders. So any of the 96 NVR range is really only in the NVR range. We did have it on a couple of the turbo DVRs previously, but focusing specifically on the NVR range, any of the 96 recorders, they do support the inbuilt RAID functionality. Using a software RAID inside the machine, we're able to arrange the RAID in 4 formats: RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, RAID 6 and RAID 10. That's 5 formats, not 4, I apologise. You can Google the different RAID formats to your own heart's content. What we find most people use is RAID 5 or RAID 6 with a global hot spare. That means in the Hikvision recorders, if you use RAID 5, that is one disk failure and the RAID will continue to run. So one disk, all the data is still retained and able to be recovered and retrieved. You can swap that faulty disk out and then the RAID will rebuild in the background and the RAID will be completed again. But it gives you the redundancy required, especially if it's in a critical area: processing, food, plant, health and safety applications, chemical processes, or public safety. A lot of people then require a redundant system. So there's a different number of ways we can achieve this. A hot spare system where 2 NVRs or more than 2 NVRs can fail over completely to a hot spare NVR. And we'll talk about that in a separate video. We're specifically talking about hard drive redundancy and why that can benefit you as the customer. So most people we find use RAID 5 and RAID 6. So RAID 5 is generally one disk failure and the RAID will continue to work, store all of the data across all of the cameras that are on that machine, and it will continue to work and record to the hard drives. If a second disk fails, generally the RAID will fall over and nothing records. So it is quite critical when you do get the message or the alarm for the first disk failure that you do then need to action it. RAID 6 gives a higher level of redundancy and that requires 2 disks to fail before the RAID will fall over. Now you could argue what would be the difference? Why would you not always use RAID 6? Now sometimes it just comes down to simply the capacity in the recorder, because with RAID 6 you have to calculate your complete storage and allow 2 extra drives per array for the RAID 6 to function correctly. You can have a global hot spare that switches between the 2 arrays, but we're going to focus it based on one single array. So RAID 6, if you need 4 hard drives for the continual recording of all the cameras, you then need to factor in additional 2 hard drives for the RAID 6 configuration. RAID 5 only requires 1. So you can quickly see how many hard drives may need to be required for the operation in a standard 9.6 NVR. Now that is why on a standard 9.6 NVR, the 9632 and a 9664 recorder, so 9632 is in front of me, this is an 8-bay version. So technically, on a Hikvision recorder, the most hard disks we can put in one single array is 8 hard drives. The minimum is 3. So to make any array, the minimum disk requirement is 3, the maximum is 8. So I could have 2 arrays potentially on a 9632 because the minimum is 3, maximum is 8, or I could have 1 array of 8. Now, if I had an array of 8 and I had 8 hard drives in this machine, If I use RAID 5, 7 of them would be recording, so that would work out my total storage, and then 1 for redundancy. RAID 6, I'd require 2. RAID 0, RAID 1 and RAID 10 can offer a completely different setup, and again, not many people use that in a CCTV world, but then do go and Google that effectively to find out what array would suit you. CCTV application, model world application is RAID 5, RAID 6 generally. So if I had 8 hard drives and RAID 6 configuration, only 6 would be operational, if that makes sense. So then the actual storage is reduced on the nature of the machine. So you may have to put more machines in there. We do also offer 9/6 series and an i16 and an i24. So we have a 16 bay and a 24 bay. So you can increase your array size. Still minimum 3, maximum 8. You can have more arrays to build it up. The good thing about having more arrays on a machine is you don't have a single point of failure, sorry. So you have more redundancy is what I was trying to get to. So with the redundancy, if one array falls down, there still are multiple arrays running if you have an i16 and an i24. So you therefore have that built-in resilience and built-in redundancy. But everyone offers or works out in a slightly different way. Easiest way to calculate this, if it's RAID 5, it's your total storage plus 1 hard drive. If it's RAID 6, it's total storage plus 2 hard drives, and you need to make sure you have that spare capacity or overhead in this machine to account for that. Also, please remember, each hard drive has to be the same capacity. For RAID to work effectively, if it's a 6 terabyte drive, all drives have to be 6 terabyte. If it's 8 terabyte, all 8 terabyte. It doesn't really work if you've got 8 terabyte drives as your main and then put a 4 terabyte for the redundancy, because that data can't fall over to one drive or record or even parity across the two. So you have to make sure that all drives are worked out with the same storage capacity. It sounds complicated, it really isn't. Total storage plus 1, total storage plus 2. We do it for years. We can even configure this in-house for you so you get it and the RAID is complete. Now, upon startup on the Wizard, there used to be an option for the RAID configuration in these units. Now we don't really use that anymore, because when we do that from the Wizard, there's 3 options. There's a background one, which does the brunt of it in the background without you really noticing it, or there's a very long extended version. The best way I found to do this is using IVMS 4200, add the product to IVMS 4200, and then in IVMS 4200, which I will show you how to do, you can configure the array in there. That's really good, because if you're off-site, you can also manage and see the array and potentially repair it, because talking someone through it on the screen is quite difficult, sometimes impossible. So I tend to say use IMS 4200 and the remote configuration option, which we will get to shortly. So just to run through the machine, with the 9/6 series, it really is designed for simplicity of the RAID. With the hot spare option, you are able to take a damaged drive out while the machine is running, put a new drive in, and it should pick up, rebuild the array. This is dependent on only 1 drive failing in RAID 5 and only a maximum of 2 failing in RAID 6. It should background rebuild and continue to operate as normal. The machine may operate slowly at first, but it shouldn't affect any of the recording historically or from the moment you change it. We have had issues with RAID. Everybody has issues with RAID. And those of you, if you leave a comment below, you'll always frown when RAID is mentioned, because it either works really, really well until it falls over. And that is when you really test your metal or your frustration level. If you've ever had to rebuild an array on a large site, I feel for you. I've done it several times. It really is frustrating, especially if you have to tell the customer that more than 1 drive or more than 2 drives have failed and the complete array is falling over and you have to rebuild it from scratch, and therefore nothing historically is retainable or being able to viewed and played back, exported, etc. So there can be a lot of frustration there. So what I would say is, if you are going to use RAID, there are other ways, like I say, hot spare or recording to 2 different recorders at the same time. That can offer dual redundancy and it may be less frustrating than RAID. If you are going to offer RAID, please enable the hard drive monitoring, so that if a hard drive does fail or gets rejected from the RAID, you are as operationally quick to respond as you can be to try and maintain and support that RAID without it causing an issue further on. So just some insight tips and some handy tips that we've learned in the past. So if I show you, I'm going to move you a little bit closer so I can sort of show you the recorder, and hopefully you can still see. So I'm going to pull you closer, pull you inside here. Apologies while I adjust the camera. So you can see on this unit here, With the 9.6 unit, it has a lockable front on there to stop anyone accessing it. If I unlock it, 2 tabs on the side, and I can simply take that flap down. You can see now, these are the 8 hard drive bays. When you get the unit new, actually they come with coasters or rails. You screw these to the side, and if you buy the unit from DVS and ask it to be populated, we will populate it. They simply slide in and out, and these are classed as hot swap drives. This comes down to enable you to simply remove and swap hard drives, especially in array configuration, to make it easy to access, very efficient and very time efficient to be able to swap these drives. So take a drive out, make sure you identify it. There's a label here which tells you which hard drive relates to which space. In the menu or in the log, it will tell you which hard drive has been rejected. Take the corresponding one out, change it for a new one, simply insert it again, click it back in, and make sure you listen for that double click. It won't function properly until you put the flap back up, but you can see 8 bays there. This particular unit on a 9.6, we can support up to 10 terabyte per hard drive per bay. So that's 80 terabytes in total currently, and that's always increasing. And with firmware, we may see that continually increase. Once you've finished, simply locate the flap back up, lock it into place, and that's locked. And then if somebody pushes the buttons, they can't undo the flap. Over a period of 5 to 10 minutes, that disk may give you an alarm, but then it'll see the disk back there, the alarm will go. If it was in a RAID configuration, it would start to rebuild. But I'm going to transfer you over now to IMS 4200 and show you the RAID configuration, what it does, and how to access it and how to set it up. So it's just quite a brief introduction, really, to what RAID can offer. So stay tuned, and I'll transfer you over. Okay, for those of you that do want to do this through the recorder, you can either do it during initialization through the wizard. If you want to activate this retrospectively, so you want to go to the site and you want to enable RAID, you can absolutely do it through the menu, and I will show you IMS 4200 separately. Simply go into the menu, into storage, into advanced, and there is an option there, here, enable RAID. Currently this is disabled on this machine, but we are going to enable it. So I'm going to click enable. It gives you a prompt here that says use the enterprise class hard drive, and that's important. So you want to make sure that you are using, and if you're using our Toshiba drives in this kind of machine, they will be the enterprise level. If you're using a different brand, please do make sure they're enterprise. They're meant for RAID configuration. They have the RV sensor, so the vibration sensor, multi-stack, temperature, vibration, etc. And the demanding workloads that RAID would put onto the hard drive. So please make sure you do use enterprise class. They are enterprise class in here, so that's fantastic. So we're going to enable RAID. Next thing, we click apply. The machine will so when we click apply, the machine will reboot. So I might stop the video and come back to it. So click apply. Yeah, no. So I'm going to click yes, and then I'll come back. Okay, so the unit has rebooted. Again, if I go back to storage option, you will see under RAID here, there is a new option here, and then array, and then firmware. So we're going to start a physical disk. What I am going to do, under storage device, no, I'm not, sorry, under RAID, we can use the one-touch configuration, or we can create one. Now what you will notice is I've got some different size hard drives in here. That's not what we would traditionally use. Like I said, you want to use all of the same size hard drives. For demonstration purposes, I am going to use a mixture because they're already in the machine. And if you see on the right hand side, there's an option to have a hot spare. So if I wanted to create array and create, say, disk 1 as a hot spare, I can select it and it will create disk 1 as the hot spare. Now that could be global, as it says there, or for the array. So I'm going to remove it, and we're going to create an array. So I'm going to click on create, array name DVS, RAID level 5, so 0, 1, 5, 6 and 10. We're going to create RAID 5, initialize fast, and we're going to select disk 3, 5 and 7, because they're the same. 3, 5 and 7 are the same size, and like I said, I want to create it. It's a minimum of 3 disks, maximum of 8, but I want to create it with 3 the same size. So I'm going to click on OK. I'll wait for that to work in the background. So you can see, that's put that into an array. So these 3 discs belong to DVS array. I could go and create another array. So I could now go and create one with the other 3 discs, but one is much larger, so I'm not going to bother. But I could create a second array, and again, that gives me dual redundancy. But you can create 1 array, 2 arrays, etc. Minimum of 3, maximum of 8. And then you can assign a global hot spare within the one of the other arrays and create it. But we've got 3 discs assigned to the DVS array. Now, if I go down to the array function on the left hand side, you will see the DVS array here. So it's initializing and it's doing it fast background. Now that's 7%. This could take 2 to 3 to 4 hours, depending on the size of the hard drive and what data that it's initializing. That's moving quite steadily. I'd say that's going to take around 20 minutes. But before that actually finishes rebuilding, we won't have any recording that we can play back. It is functional, so again it says array 1, that's the free space. So it's taken 2 discs, so it's taken 3 discs under RAID 5. If you remember, all of them were 3 or 4 terabyte discs. So it's taken 2 of them and created nearly a 7.5 terabyte array, and then 1 as the RAID 5 hot spare, if that makes sense. So whilst each disk is 4 terabyte, classed as 4 terabyte, you never get full 4 terabyte. The larger the drive, the bigger the buffer size for the pre-record, etc. for the cache. Taking 2 4 terabyte drives gives me a total of 7.5 terabytes of working capacity. Sorry, gotta go back into that. It timed out. So that gives me 7.5 terabytes of working capacity with a spare hard drive as the redundant one. It's set at RAID 5. If I need to rebuild it, I can click on this rebuild option here and rebuild it using a different array discs. I don't need to rebuild it. It's initializing here and it is up to 23%. So that'll continue to go. Once it's at 100%, that will then give me the option to do the playback within this array. It's as simple as that. What I can do then is under the firmware, it tells me the version, physical count disks, array count, 0 virtual disks, RAID level, global hot spare, support rebuild yes, and medium speed. So you've got high, medium and low speed. The recommended background task speed is medium. You can make it faster. We have seen instances where when people have made it faster, it causes issues with the machine itself and the operation. Just leave it as the default medium. But we can, that's the only one you can offer, that's more of an information thing. Once it's finished building, it will come up to 100%, that array will be online and will be completely operational. In this array, if 1 disk was to fail, like we said, it's RAID 5 with 1 hot spare. If it was to fail, 1 disk, we would continue to work. I'd need to then replace that 1 disk. If 2 disks failed, the whole array would fall over. There would be no recording in that instance. So just bear that in mind. But that is as simple as it takes to get RAID online. And that is it. And like I said, I can build more than 1 array. So I could then go to create another array. So I can say create array, array name, DVS2, RAID level 6. I'll do 5 because you need 3. And then you've got 1, 2 and 4. So again, because they're different size hard drives, you wouldn't traditionally do it that way, so it'd just be silly. Click on OK. That will then go, because of the disk drives, it won't let me do it because it needs a minimum of 3 terabyte capacity. That doesn't, the disk, there's a couple of 2 terabyte hard disks in there. Again, it goes back to the limitation, 3 terabytes is the minimum hard drive size. With RAID, most people are using 6, 8 or 10 terabytes to get that high-end capacity. That is as simple as it is to create an array. And like I said, it does it in the background. There you go, it's on 54%. And that is as simple as it is to create RAID on the front end. What I will do now is quickly show you on IMS 4200 and how you can interact with it on IMS 4200, just to give you that overview. So stay tuned and I'll transfer you over. Okay, welcome back. So, IMS 4200. So I've simply added the device, this device here, my NVR, which I've just been working on via the local GUI. I've added it to IMS 4200 because you can do this remotely. It's super simple. If you don't want to use the GUI, maybe it's in a rack and you can't access it. if you use IVMS 4200, you can realize this function. One thing to note currently is this RAID function isn't available on the web GUI. Never been available, don't know if it ever will, but you can do it on the local GUI and you can do it through the IVMS 4200 and Hike Central and the remote configuration on there. So, add the device, which we have here, to IVMS 4200 in device management. Next, simply click on the remote configuration option here, and now you need to click on advanced function. If you click on basic function, it opens up a web style interface. We want the old STK interface. So we click on advanced function. Let it load, and you all remember this sort of interface for programming. Great, isn't it? And some of the functions are only available in this older style SDK, like login security, like event, like image for corridor mode, rotate, like pause, like thermography. The one we're really super interested in is the storage option. Expand that and you've got general. Now, we don't see any hard drives in this general one because we've enabled RAID, and we did it from the front end if you remember. So, if we go to array, you can see RAID is enabled. Now, if I didn't enable it through the GUI, I could go to here, enable RAID, it would ask me to reboot the machine, which I would, and then I could configure an array through this SDK interface. You can see it shows me all of the drives. I've got one key configuration, create array, or configure hot standby. If I go to array, you can see there is the array I configured on the GUI. It's online, it's in RAID 5, and it's nearly finished initializing. I can recreate it or I can delete it. Logical disk, there is no logical disk. We've got physical disks and arrays. And then the array information, it tells you like we did on the GUI. What formats are supported, the version, the array number that's supported, virtual disk, and then the background task speed. So in going back to physical disks, I can create an array by clicking create an array, give it a name, and again I won't do it because we don't have the capacity in the hard drives. But again, quick and select the hard drive, so I could say that one, that one, that one. Click on save, create it, and then I could follow the same process that we did on the local GUI. I can do it on the web SDK or the 4200 SDK as such. So it's a super simple process. And again, if I go to logical disk now, array here, there we are, it's actually finished building. That's online, it's finished building. Therefore, from this point on, I'd be able to get any recording that's stored on that array. I can recreate it, so if I clicked on recreate, it would rebuild the array. So if I had a rejected drive, look, I may have to replace that drive. I may have to go in and replace this hard drive. Again, I'd have to be on site, and I may choose to use the local GUI for that because I'm at the machine, I've replaced the hard drive physically, and I may have to do that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is as simple as it takes. You can see all of the drive statuses here. One thing you can't do is under storage, it doesn't give you any of the hard drives here, so you can't select them and then unmount the hard drive, mount it, etc., or format it. What you have to do once you've enabled RAID, either here or on the local GUI, is actually rebuild the array. So you go into array, click it, and then recreate it, and it would try to rebuild it. And if you have replaced the hard drive, it would recreate it with that new drive in. If there's 2 new hard drives replaced on RAID 5, you've lost all chance of recovering data. You're just rebuilding the array and getting it back up and running again. That is as simple as it gets. Again, if you choose to use RAID, entirely up to you. There's a strong argument for it. There's a strong argument against it. RAID is one of those things that is a very emotional and provocative conversation. Me, not so pro-RAID, to be honest. The experiences I've had have been bad experiences, not brand specific, across the 27 years I've been doing this job. I've seen some real stinkers where it could have been avoided. It would have been better in some instances to lose one hard drive rather than losing the whole array, or 2 hard drives, than losing the whole array and therefore losing all of the recording. But there is a strong argument for, and a strong argument against. RAID is fantastic and it works until it doesn't. But again, this is here just for information, show you how to do it and how to do it locally on the GUI and how to do it remotely on the IVMS 4200. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave any comments in the section below. Any experiences you've had, please leave them in the comments below. Let others share those experiences. And if you've got any positive or negative ones, do please fill us in. Before you move on, don't forget to hit that like and the subscribe button. Without you guys and the support we get, this channel isn't worth continuing, and I'm sure you want this to continue. Stay tuned, stay safe. See you next week for another how-to video.